accusations against some candidates. Then, of course, Bushenyi is having problems, a lot of potential there for violence. And then a lot of all these pockets in Mubende. I think Kasanda, if I'm not mistaken, the constituency of Simeon, the former police spokesperson. Vehicles being, windscreens being broken, guns being sighted, and all these things, accusations and counter-accusations. Why do you think, in your view, these big stakes, why there's so much heightened interest in a primary election at this stage?
Thank you. As the Bible says, what you sow is what you reap. I think we have militarized politics in Uganda for quite a long time. Political competition in Uganda is highly militarized and militantized, if you want. There is no tolerance and no compromise, not only during the election season, but throughout the political calendar. We are always using abusive language. We are always saying that if you don't compromise with me, you can go and get a chibanja elsewhere in another country. We are supposed to eliminate each other in politics. So I think we have not cultivated the culture and the politics of compromise, tolerance, and accommodation. And because we have practiced violence throughout, if, for example, somebody Googled Uganda's politics or Uganda generally and was a tourist coming to Uganda, some might be scared because the police is always tear gassing. If one were to take stock of how many incidences of tear gas take place in Uganda, on average, you may find at least more than 5 every day. And when you go to parliament, you find there is no compromise. When you go to political talk shows, you find different political party representatives are never compromising. So when you are tear gassing,
here we compromise. We tolerate each other a lot.
I don't know how, I have not watched you a lot, but I know that when you were at NBS, there was no tolerance. At least there I watched you. So I am following, at least I followed you, and I don't agree with you. Therefore, we are reaping what we have sown. When you are beating people like Honorable Zake or any other people, do not think that you are just beating the opposition. And do not think that you are not showing those ones who are seated and watching, because now everybody thinks that using muscle power, not intellectual power, using hard power, not soft power, is the way to do politics in Uganda. So Uganda's politics has been militarized, and the political competition in Uganda is militarized. And that's why even we have very many generals as candidates. Look at the presidential candidates that we have always been having, and we are likely to have on the ballot papers. General Museveni, General Mugisha, General Tumukunde, I don't know which other general is also coming. So this is an atmosphere, a public sphere that has been poisoned by militarizing tactics, and that is what we are reaping. And you can see we are looking at it at primaries. Now what is going to come?
We are going to come to that question. But isn't the reference to generals a misnomer in effect? When you say it has been militarized, are they the same with the participation, the militarization? Is it the same with the participation necessarily of the generals? Are you saying that because they are generals, then it is in effect automatically militarized? Because I know there are some countries where generals or soldiers have participated, but it is not necessarily violent. So is there something inherent in our election different from just the participation of the generals in themselves? maybe from the people, because even the primary elections right now that we are talking about do not involve a general. They are by the people, you see, who are actually, like if they say Koboko, none of them is a soldier.
You are summarizing what I said wrongly. I didn't say that the political atmosphere is militarized because of the generals. The generals was one of the illustrations.
Okay.
I have said that we have militarized the political space. And militarizing political space does not necessarily zero only on the military, but I just gave you an example of the military involvement in politics. Because after all, most of these violences we have experienced have the military behind them. Incidentally, I must credit Ugandans that we have not experienced in our long instability politics communal violence. In Uganda, we don't normally have communal violence. That is one community trying to inherit another community. It is normally state-instigated violence. So the militarism does not necessarily actually even mean the people with uniform. Militarism is wider than people with uniform. Okay. Like, for example, our politics were militarized way back from the 1966 crisis, and that was not that the government in power was of generals, but they used the military. So the point I was making was not in reference only to the individuals. I am not talking about individuals as agents. I'm talking about the system. We have got a system of no tolerance, of no compromise, and a system where force seems to be idealized. We seem to be promoting, when somebody is not so militant, sometimes they say he's not fit to be a politician in Uganda. They used to make that reference in respect of Mose Semogerere. Say that one was fit only to be in the church, at the altar. He was not fit to be in politics. In other words, we seem to be saying that is a general attitude and perception that those who have got military credentials are the people who are suitable to be in politics in Uganda. And the sum total of that attitude, those perceptions, those dispositions, those practices is what we are seeing now. And the atmosphere is actually poisoned. It is not only the primary elections. I was watching the news this evening. There was also violence between the youth of NRM and the NUP here in Kampala. And you can see even in the villages up country, they are taking there the kanyamas. I think some candidate in Shema has even imported kanyamas from Bwaise. So it is a question of kanyama politics now. It is not a question of civil politics. Okay. So the total sum of Uganda's politics in this era is not civil but military.
Good. Let me make a follow-up of that with Mr. Ramadan Gobi. The do-or-die nature of or the do-or-die demand for these positions, what do you relate it to in terms of the political economy?
I think, first of all, politics is about stakes, as you stated. And I really think the stakes are so high in these NRM primaries. They are high because this is the re-election for the various positions they are going for.
In the country.
I should hazard a guess that between 60 to 70% of those who are going to win the primaries, they are likely to turn out to be the winners of the main election, which we shall have. Those who are going to win on Friday. And they know that. That's why I think they are, all of them now fighting so hard to ensure that they are the ones to carry the flag. And also you remember, a few months ago, I don't know, weeks I think, the rebel MPs went and begged for forgiveness to
about
go
2 months ago.
About 2 months ago, to go back into
the group of Sechikubo, Barnabas Tinkasimire, Monica from Teso, that group, and this other gentleman, they were about 16, yeah.
Ask yourself, why were they asking for forgiveness? They have been rebellious against the party for most of the period they have spent in parliament, since they were elected on NRM ticket. They opposed the change of that clause in the constitution to remove the term limit and the age limit.
102.
But towards the election, they went back to the party leadership and sought forgiveness. It's because they know that they need that party ticket to go to the main election with. If they are the flag bearers, they are halfway the journey, almost, or something like a 75%.
Is that across the country as we talk now?
Not necessarily across the country. That's why you see
is
there
that
are
kind
pockets.
of, is that pulse being, is that a political pulse that is felt across the country? That once you get the NRM flag, then you are almost there. Across the 50 mark.
If you went and analyzed very well where this violence is taking place, you will find that actually it's where NRM is very strong. Where there are chances of having an opposition person winning a certain constituency, there is no much violence there. The candidates know they are going to compete, you know, several times. But where the NRM is very strong, those ones know, once I get the flag, I'm already in the 11th parliament. So they are fighting so much to ensure that they are the ones who take up that. I think that is partly my honest analysis of this. And you know, the legacy, no legacy is so richer than honesty. I wanted to be bluntly honest on that.
Okay, what about, how about, I asked you about the political economy.
Yes.
In terms of the expectations for the benefits at Parliament, is that a big driver?
I was coming to that.
Good, go for it.
That, you know, the politics of Uganda has become quite highly commercialized, partly because politics is becoming the most lucrative job in the country, unfortunately. It's the most lucrative job because when you try to balance it up with the other professions in the country, on average, a member of parliament earns a relatively very high salary. And
average about 36 million, between 36 to 40.
Now tell me, how many jobs in Uganda pay 36 million shillings? I think the governor of the central bank,
think there are more than 10.
And a few other top
Central Bank,
most.
KCCA,
Yes.
URA.
If you went to government to work in government,
UCC.
all of these people you see in government, because the head of a ministry is the PS.
Yeah.
It is just recently that they were given 15 million shillings. The next to the PS is a director. A director earns 3 million shillings.
Wasn't it increased?
No.
No,
A commissioner earns 1.8 million shillings. So these are big people in the ministry. When you come to private sector, it's even worse, except if you are going to be the CEO and in a few companies. And you know, Ugandan economy is quite very narrow. So people are selling houses. They are selling their property to stand because they expect a higher return on that investment than any other investment they could make with that money. And this we need to take it very seriously, and that's why I always, whenever I'm here, I say that unless Uganda addresses the issue of structural economic transformation to create productive opportunities for younger people, In the future, actually, we are going to find here a ballot paper which has 100 people jostling for one position.
That's your projection?
I'm telling you, because politics has been emerging gradually as the only lucrative venture people could do. Get in.
Can I come back to you? Because I'm told Kijaji is already online. The line is not very clear. I'm told he's out of Kampala. Honorable, can you get us? Honorable John Kijaji.
Hello.
Honorable, good evening.
Good evening to you.
How did you find yourself in Fort Portal? We knew you were supposed to be in the studio here at UBC, Honorable.
Not Fort Portal, Njeru.
Oh, you are in Njeru?
Yes, we had an issue in Njeru and I had to rush there.
That is good for us. As long as you can stay with us up to the end, because you are our important guest this evening, we don't mind. All we want from you is the information, and we appreciate that you are busy trying to sort out a number of things in the primary elections going on. So start us from, you're most welcome to the show. This is Behind the Headlines on UBC. And I had already introduced you to our viewers as the Vice Chairperson of the NRM Electoral Commission. Did I make a mistake?
You are right, absolutely right.
Thank you. Now, we are looking at the potential for violence in the NRM primaries. And the question that is begging a lot in the mind of everybody is, why the violence? Why the potential violence? Why the heightened interest? Why the high stakes in a primary election, in your view, as the manager of this election?
As you know, close to 76% of the members of parliament are NRM.
Yes.
And from the last two elections, the NRM dominates the parliament, and most of the people, once you have passed the primaries, then you are sure of going to parliament. So people are putting a lot of effort, a lot of energy in the primaries to make sure that they pass the primaries, because once you have won the primaries, for 76% of them, it is a sure way of joining parliament. So definitely, as a mass party, everybody is now struggling to make sure that they go through the primaries, which are due on Friday, 4th this week. So that's the main thrust. So once the primaries are done, people are already in parliament.
Now, start us off. What is the problem in Njeru?
Njeru, it was actually a minor problem among our candidates. We had the challenge of a few registers where some candidates were attempting to either add or delete, because our mandate was display of the the NRM voters register. There was no addition or subtraction. That was the instruction, because we were just displaying. But in some villages, they had started adding people and removing others because we are using the hard copy of the voters register, and they were beginning to cross out some people or add some people where there was space. So I had to rush there, and there was a very big complaint from the candidates. So we had to rush there. Secondly, I was also assisting my teams which were doing training, because we were training today our district election officials and then the sub-county election officials who are going down to train the parish and village election officials tomorrow.
Good. Something that is important to this discussion. You can correct me. My calculation shows that there are about 425 MP constituencies, including the women. Is that the number you have today?
It's about that.
How many NRM candidates are participating in all these constituencies in total?
We have close to, for the members of parliament, the direct members of parliament, we have close to 1,650 for members of parliament. And when you put the women members of parliament, who are also about 450, and then the LC5 chairpersons are about 500 in the 136 districts.
So that quick calculation brings it to 2,600 all candidates across participating. Confirm to us, have you filled all constituencies?
We have filled all constituencies. Actually, I would like
Oh, sorry, technical team will catch him back. He was on the verge of giving us the numbers and the details of the management. Let's come back to the studio as we wait for Honorable Kijaji. That's the problem of technology. Honorable, sorry, not yet. Honorable, I was going to say Honorable Ndebesa. It's okay, you are honorable enough in academia. Let's look at, I want your take on the money issue. In the last parliament, the 9th parliament, my source told me that an MP would earn between 23 to 28, about there. Towards the end, it went up to about 30. As we talk now, you will never get it from an MP, the right amount, but we have sources who tell us that the calculation, when you consolidate it, because it is broken into different allowances, it goes, the lowest, Kampala MP gets about 37 million. And someone who comes from, say, Kabong or thereabout, maybe the area of Kidepo or Kisoro, or maybe deep in Koboko, the Yumbenia, South Sudan, gets about 42 million. That's what I am told. Do you think, like your colleague, Professor Ramadan, that this is the primary driver of the potential violence in all these places, and this boiling and juicing up of blood and all that?
Before I address that one directly, but let me first make a rejoinder to what my colleagues have pointed out, that you see the violence is because that the stakes are very high. True, the stakes are very high and fair enough, but I don't see the direct correlation between stakes being very high and then violence. Stakes can be very high and therefore the competition will be very high. And we are not suggesting here that wherever there is political competition that is very high, it tantamounts to now also being violent. The two are not necessarily correlating. You can have high competition, you can have people arguing, but not necessarily becoming violent. The question of violence may not necessarily be of the stakes being high, but I think because of the political culture of militarism that has been promoted in this country way back since the 1966. Coming back to the money question. Let's even first look at it from this angle. Whereas most people are struggling to survive after this pandemic. Whereas most people are crying about earnings, about how to live, we have people who are splashing money around. It is even embarrassing. And I think it is even distorting the politics and attitudes of the citizens. That whereas most of us, most people are under stress because of economic hardships, people have splashed money and it is the talk of the day. Money was used in SEC and there was a complaint and everybody was talking about his opponent using a lot of money. We are now talking about money question. So it has become maniocracy instead of democracy. Now, in this maniocracy, we first of all want to ask, where are people getting this money? That comes back to how they are earning. So
where are they getting it from?
So most of the people who are splashing it are those who have been in parliament, as my colleague here has pointed out, and you have pointed out. Whereas others are tightening their belts, that means in this country we have people who are loosening their belts because of unequal access to public resources. And this is politically embarrassing. And this is creating two countries. We have one country of the haves and another of the have-nots. And the economists here can even tell us, they normally do that analysis, the inequality in this country, he would also be talking about income inequality, but that is economists. But some of us do not look at only income inequality. He says he's also a political economist. We are looking at wealth inequality generally, but also power inequality, access to power, access to justice, access to many resources, including scholarships and all that. So there is a challenge of this politics of using money and using the military, which distorts democracy. So this does not augur well for democratic development in this country. But furthermore, and more seriously to me, it does not augur well with national integration. We have a lot of disparities. For example, according to the poverty map of Uganda, released by Uganda National Bureau of Statistics, regions, especially Eastern region, lags behind. And some regions, Karamoja, the poverty levels are at 60%. But you find in other regions, it is 7%, 12%, 20%. That's a very huge disparity. And now this huge disparity, we are looking at the candidates now conflicting with each other, and this conflict transforming into violence. Sooner than later, we are likely to have now conflict between the leaders and the led. You might just dismiss the Karamoja people and say, well, those ones have always been poor. Then when minerals are discovered, you find they are also exploited for the benefit of non-Karamojong. And these Karamojong end up coming on the streets of Kampala. When they grow old, we look at them on the streets when they are young. When they grow old, where do they disappear? Do you think they go back at Karamojong? They are here. Now we are going to have structural violence within the communities. So we shall move away from political violence during elections to structural violence because of high levels of inequality. So we have to reorient our politics such that money is not the primary issue. Because now, you see, getting a position in government is purchasing it. It is all about purchasing. And it has become a norm. It has become normal, actually. It has been normalized that people are using money, and I hear my colleague Tango is saying, those who are using it, those who are doing this violence, we are going to punish you. When shall we see anybody being punished? People are not punished.
That is an important question we need to ask.
People are not punished. They
Honorable
Kijaj. They are just rhetoric and joking around. I mean, unless we demonstrate that using money in politics or using violence in politics is not right, and it has to have a party or a political code of conduct, like Tanzania used to have a political code of conduct under the Musoma resolution. For them, in those days of Nyerere, even when you became...
Do they have it even now?
No, well, they have a party conduct, but then, like the Musoma resolution, which barred even politicians from owning businesses. But here, now, it is normal when you actually don't have a lot of money, you don't expect to be in politics. You hear people talk about, if you do not have 500 million, don't bother even joining politics. So this has distorted elections. Elections fundamentally, primarily, they are supposed to be an occasion for citizens holding those who are aspiring or those who have been in office are politically accountable.
Okay.
That's what it's supposed to do. But today, it is not holding those in power accountable or those who are aspiring to show how they would be politically accountable. The issue now, the stakes now, they say the stakes are high because they want to earn more, and therefore they are literally investing using money. And up country there, I follow. People are paying, literally. They go to Erare, they leave there some money. They go to Erare, they leave money. And if you don't have money, and you go to Erare and you don't leave there money, people will automatically dismiss you and say, for you, you have already lost elections. And this is a distortion because this is not, has not been in the past. In 1980, I was old enough, I was in high school already, and I could follow. People were not voted because of money. So the distortion of politics in those days was maybe religious affiliation. Now it has been substituted with
money.
Maniocracy. So,
or the gun.
And the gun.
Okay.
And all these are actually going 2 steps forward.
Professor, can I interrupt you?
Yes.
With all the respect, I need us to go for a break right now. I want to make a follow-up on that, and we have a touch on that issue of if money of violence, or the use of it, or using the tools of violence, have now substituted, something else. At what point did the rain begin beating us? Let's go for a break right now. This is Behind the Headlines. Don't go away. We are here discussing the NRM primary elections, which are this Friday, and we are looking at the potential for violence and whether the NRM Electoral Commission has the capacity to handle that violence. We have a poll question that you can participate by answering or giving your view on. The poll question is, how best can the NRM party minimize the potential for violence in the primaries? It is right there on your screen. And the question, let me repeat, how best can NRM party minimize the potential for violence in the primaries? Let's go for a break right now. We will be back.
COVID-19 is a disease caused by the new coronavirus. Know the symptoms. They include fever, coughing, muscle pain, shortness of breath. What can you do? Wash your hands frequently with soap and water for 20 seconds or use an alcohol-based hand rub. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. When coughing or sneezing, cover your mouth with a tissue or flexed elbow. Discard tissues into a closed bin and then wash your hands. Maintain a distance of at least 1 meter between yourself and someone who is ill. Seek medical help if you display symptoms. Wear a mask if you are coughing or sneezing, or if you are caring for someone who is sick. Dispose of your masks into a closed bin and then wash your hands. Check trusted sources regularly for accurate information. Remember, the best prevention is to keep yourself healthy and follow these safe steps.
The Electoral Commission shall display the lists of all persons who have been recommended for deletion from the National Voters Register for a period of 10 days. That is from 11th to 20th March 2020 at each parish or ward headquarters throughout Uganda. The purpose of this display is to enable any person who may have been wrongly recommended for deletion to raise an objection to the parish or ward tribunal. The parish or ward tribunal shall consider and make the final decision concerning recommendations for inclusion, deletions, or correction made by the public. A clean register is a cornerstone for conducting peaceful, free, fair, and credible elections. Announced by the Electoral Commission.
with support from United Nations Development Program, UNDP.
Kwa wakati huu, watu wengi wanapitia changamoto ngumu. Shule zimefungwa, ajira na maisha vimepotezwa. Fujo kwenye familia na fujo dhidi ya watoto vimeongezeka. Ni rahisi kuhisi umefadhaika, uchungu, huzuni, upweke na kuogopa yatakayotokea kesho. Tatizo la kiakili lililosababishwa na janga kubwa la COVID-19 linaweza kuchanganya watoto lisipozungumziwa. Serikali ikiwa inaweka mbinu za kupima, kutibu na kutafuta wagonjwa wa COVID-19, tunatoa wito kwa serikali kuweka huduma za afya ya akili kwa kila kituo chake cha wagonjwa. Ujumbe huu unaletwa kwenu na kituo cha AfriChild na chuo kikuu cha Makerere kwa ushirikiano na Wizara ya Jinsia, Ajira na Maendeleo ya Jamii.
Welcome back from the break, and we are into the second segment of the Behind the Headlines of this edition. Today, the 2nd of September 2020. It's a Wednesday, and we have 2 days to go to vote for the voters across the country, to vote for whoever they are going to choose to be the flag bearer, as they call it, or to represent the party, the NRM party, in the main election that will be held or that will be had at the beginning of 2021. Before we went for the break, the Honorable Ndebesa had argued that the politics generally in the country of violence and money have only replaced something else. And let's, Professor, you need to explain that more, because especially I'm interested in you sharing with our viewers on whether we can put a hand on where exactly the country began to, because I was young, but I have been told by people who have followed our politics that 1996, the election was not as monetized, if you talk about money, as of now. Not, I think not even 201. Yes, violence in 201 was talked about a lot, violence. Even the one of 1996, violence was talked a lot about. But how about, let's first talk about the issue of the, crazy monies that people are preparing, the financial war chest is just unbelievable. Someone told me that someone in one of the constituencies in Western Uganda has prepared to use 780 million just for the primary. How about the main election? How much will they get when they come back, even if they go through? How about people who lose? How do they regain this money?
But before we come to that money question, let's also maybe make a correction about violence.
Yes.
Uganda's elections have been characterized by violence
throughout.
In 1961, 62 especially, 1962, there was too much violence here in Uganda. And that one was not orchestrated by the state, but it was the by the state, by the local state. That was the Uganda government versus especially the supporters of DP who were Catholics. Even their houses were burnt, and their crops were cut down. And then you find in 1980, especially in West Nile region, there was violence, and some MPs were even prevented from participating in the elections. So it has been a disease that has grown, the cancer that has grown, and there has not been much effort used to stem it. And now it is even more militarized. Now, coming back to the question of money. Money, actually, in the 1960s and 80s elections was not an issue, almost at all. And whichever candidate stood, even if you were poor, you had other issues to contend with. Now, the challenge today, even in the CA elections, there was money. In 1996, there was also money used. But of course, it is escalating. Why it is escalating, among other reasons, is that when in Uganda now, we no longer have political values or interests that people compete for. You see, a political value would endear you to your candidate.
Tell my viewer what you mean in political science terms by political value.
A political value, let's use a practical example, like here in the Uganda region, people might be valuing federalism, and therefore they look at federalism.
So it is the ideology, in other words? Or are they linked?
They are linked, but they can be interchangeably used. But values at some times are different. For example, in the Americas, when they talk about pro-life and
pro-abortion, pro-life.
Yeah, pro-life and pro-choice. Or when you find in the European countries, there are those who are for immigration or for welfare. There are those who are for economics of welfare, and there are those who are economics for the rich. And now here, we do not have clear values for which people are campaigning, and therefore, candidates do not easily identify, sorry, the voters do not identify with the candidates along a value. And therefore, what differentiates a candidate from another now is who pays more. But also, I think the government has not also condemned it and suppressed it, because it started with this notion of facilitation. That when you invite people, you have to facilitate them. Now, facilitation can be defined elastically. It could mean actually giving people money. You just call somebody in Kampala to meet him or her, and you say, I have given you a facilitation of $1 million. Definitely somebody who can
from Makerere to Sheraton.
Then you are
transport of 1 million.
You are facilitated by $1 million. Certainly, you can see that is a veiled way of saying we are corrupting you. So it is lack of political values and interests and principles that are very clear for which people can identify, such that if I am a voter of Govi here or you there, I associate with you, I link with you because we share the same values. Today, the question of values, if we asked the candidates, if we asked even educated people, today, I have asked even my students when I'm teaching to talk about political spectrum, the question of political spectrum, that is whether one is left or right or center or whatever. They say they have never heard of that. Even political science students, they have never heard of that. Therefore, we have transferred Western political systems here, but they seem not to be practiced as they should be, that when there is political competition along political parties or within political parties, it is somebody who, the one whom you share a certain political direction, a certain political value, a certain political outlook, a certain political orientation that you identify with. Therefore, identification of candidates now with the voters is nothing but paying money. In the past, if I can make a distinction, is that in 1960s, for example, this is where now one could even go to say that the question of religion was cutting across the whole country. There are certain, like for example, the DPs, who were mainly Catholics, had been marginalized during the colonial period. And therefore, they identified themselves with justice for that group.
Truth and justice.
Not necessarily truth and justice, but justice against the injustice, the historical injustice of the British.
Why are you editing the mantra of DP? Mao will not be happy with you because it is truth and justice.
Because I'm a historian and I know better than what you people are talking about. Now
the truth is not supposed to be there.
The UPC, the UPC had emerged out of UNC of UNC, and it was a struggle for economic justice against domination of the whites and the Indians.
Okay.
And it was for the marginalized. Now all parties have converged. They have converged, do you know on what? On nothing. Nobody is talking about those political spectrum issues. It is not the peasants, because peasants have been left. They are only solicited for being paid so that they can give a vote.
Okay.
It is not for business, because nobody is seriously talking about the business orientation. It's not even against imperialism and Western domination. It is a question of who can pay most, and that is the challenge, which was not there in the past, because in the past people had certain orientation based on whatever, even if it was a wrong orientation, but it was an orientation. Okay. Today the orientation is who can pay you most.
Okay. Gobi, can you put a pulse or feel where, in your view, the issue of money took center stage in our Ugandan politics, apart from the violence?
You know, Charles, it's not long ago we had a conversation here on the same. First of all, by the way, thank you for keeping on the mask so that I can remove mine. You are very good.
I'm sacrificing
both
for
of
you.
I said that, and I quoted the research.
Yeah.
There is nowhere in the world, not a single country, where democracy has been sustained where economics has failed. Professor is a professor of history. He will tell us whether he knows
no
such
country,
countries.
no nation, no single nation in the world
No single country
has
sustained
democracy where the economy is not working.
Exactly. Beyond 12 years.
Here, democracy, you are referring to liberal democracy.
Absolutely. Okay. Democracy which works.
No,
in other words.
Even others work.
You know, I believe in economics which works. That's what I teach. I also believe in a democracy which works.
Okay.
Democracy works. There is a man called Adam
Smith
Sawitzky, who is a professor at New York University. He was at Harvard and went to New York. He's a fantastic researcher in political economy. Celebrated, actually.
Yeah.
He did research a few years ago, not few, very few, about 15 years ago also, where he analyzed all countries and their history of democracy. And he found that wherever a country was below $1,000 US of per capita income, they sustained democracy for 12 years. And after that, the democracy failed. That's why you see professors telling you, at the beginning, even here, we didn't have these issues we are seeing today. Violence, too much money, and so on.
Violence, but not
the
too much money.
democracy was a bit working because we were still in that bracket of the 12 years. When you are below $3,000 but above 1,000, you sustain democracy for 27 years.
From 12 to 27.
When you are above 3,000 but below 60,000, you sustain democracy for 60 years. When you are above $60,000, you sustain democracy forever. Now, when the professor is talking about some of these things of values and so on, those things don't work in real life. What works in real life is economics. People, those other values, like, for example, why was there no violence, for example, at the beginning? Perhaps people were rallying their politics on other interests.
But there was violence in 62.
Like a religion, like, tribes, and so on. So people would go and vote a tribesmate. People would go and vote a fellow Catholic. Those things don't work now. What works now is who has the money. You know, politics is an exciting thing. Politics is as exciting as any other thing. I don't know whether you know things which excite people. For example, sport. Haven't you seen people fighting over football?
Yeah.
Are they fighting because they are violent?
No.
Excitement
Fanaticism,
without rules is what actually causes the problem. The rules of the game in Uganda's politics are either not there, or where they are not enforced. Even in football, we see the same things here in Uganda. In stadiums, the fans are fighting. Not because of that were brought up badly or what. No. It's because the stadiums and those who are running the football have not put rules of the game defining how spectators should behave, and when you do not adhere to those rules, what happens to you? The same violence used to happen, for example, even in Europe. You find in the UK, fans were dying in stadiums. It was in 1992. The
British fans with the Russians.
With the Russians, even amongst themselves.
Kill themselves even.
Liverpool versus Manchester, they fight, and they make a stadium collapse because of that excitement and fighting. Until a man, I think it was called Williamson or something, wrote a code of conduct for premiership in 1992 and said this must be enforced. Every fan must have a seat with a number, and if we find anyone throwing something like a bottle from a certain seat, you are committing a crime, you go to jail, or you will never be allowed in the stadium again. That reduced violence in Europe. So this violence you see in Uganda is partly because the politics of Uganda is not being managed by any rules. Those people who are giving out money, buying some youth to go and cause violence and so on, they are doing it because they know nothing will happen to them. That one, I finished it.
So are you indicting, in this case, Tanga Odoi, Kijaji and their team,
I think
that they are just pretending, in other words. They can never do anything.
Really spare
or we are expecting too much.
Spare the innocent souls. Tanga Odoi, what would Tanga Odoi do? I'm saying you need rules, and who's going to enforce them? If Uganda chooses to have politics without violence, from next week, I'm telling you it can have it. But we are not enforcing the rules.
How about if Uganda chooses that there should not be, is it possible to have rules on how much money you can use?
Absolutely.
Like the US has.
All of those things. For example,
how would you motivate? Talk to that.
Let me tell you. And I wanted to bring in the aspect of money,
yes,
to show him that actually money is everywhere.
Please go for it.
In a democracy. Because you'll find that even in the US, who are the grandparents of democracy, whichever candidate fundraises the highest amount of money, in most cases they have the bigger chance.
It's good you said in most cases, because
in most cases they win.
In the last election, I think at one time Hillary fundraised beyond.
Yeah, and Hillary won the majority vote.
Okay.
But if
I agree with you. That I agree with you.
Obama fundraised in every race he had the two.
A little bit.
Yes, go for it.
Yes, the money there, but the money there is for running elections, not for paying voters.
What do you mean by
here is in the paying of the voters? There it is money fundraised for managing and running the campaign. Actually, most money is collected from the voters and from the corporates. Here it is the opposite. The money is coming from the candidates themselves,
because we don't have
paying the voters.
One thing,
that's a slight difference.
I agree with you.
Yes.
One thing in Uganda, we don't have corporates because there are no corporations. That's first.